Heads up, the following episode contains discussion of self-harm and suicidal thoughts. If that is too much for you, you may want to skip this episode.
Never mind. I don't know what I'm doing.
I thought we were doing like a dance.
Yeah, I kind of was.
I was kind of enjoying you bobbing along there.
Painkillers make me weird.
It's appropriate for this episode.
Fuck this
That's
episode,
true.
man. This
episode. This episode. I don't. Yeah.
So, the last one, I came in here and I was like, "Oh my god, this one was so great," and both of you were like, "Meh." And now I'm like, "Oh my god, this episode is terrible," and so I'm curious to hear what you guys think.
Yeah, we'll get into it.
Okay. Let's put a pin in that. Yeah, because
Hi, friends.
Hello, Poppets.
Howdy, y'all.
Welcome to Muppet Sex and Trauma. I'm Sara Ezzat. I make the Costume Codex videos on YouTube.
I'm Jack Kramme, editor / right-hand man for Passion of the Nerd and editor for Chipperish Media.
And my name is Josh Gosdin, and I'm a pumpkin spice latte apologist.
And that's enough. I like pumpkin spice.
They're very good.
It's just not a thing here, so I don't know. I'm sure it's great.
It's just like, cardamom and cinnamon and that kind of thing.
Does it actually have pumpkin in it?
No.
That would be
I don't think so.
That'd be weird.
Although pumpkin pie is delicious.
I'm a fan of pumpkin in general, especially the smashing pumpkins. They're pretty great.
I saw them live on the Melancholy and Infinite Sadness tour.
Oh my god, what? You basically got to see peak pumpkins.
I did. Just after he shaved his head. It was grade 11 or grade 12. I don't know.
Wow. God,
yeah,
that's like saying you got to see Pink Floyd on the Wall tour or something. Like that's insane.
I was like on the main bit in the middle of the auditorium. Like I couldn't see anything.
You're right there.
That was like me the first time I saw the Prodigy. I saw them at a music festival and an old music festival called the Big Day Out, and they played in this big room they called the Boiler Room, which is where all like the rave music was. I went in there and it was dark and there was just people everywhere. Still to this day, I don't know which direction the stage was. I couldn't see it, but I could hear it. And there's all these like people like dancing with glow sticks and stuff. I'm like, all right, this is kind of cool.
That's what counts. Speaking of good trips, how about this episode?
Yeah, right.
Good trip. Yeah. So we're here to talk about episode 203, Taking the Stone. Taking the Stone was written by Justin Monjo, who we've previously seen writing for The Flax, A Human Reaction, and The Hidden Memory. And it's directed by Rowan Woods, who we've previously seen directing Back and Back and Back to the Future, Thank God It's Friday Again, A Human Reaction, and Nerve. Chiana is not well. She needs someone to talk to, but Crichton doesn't have time for her. Disappointed, Chiana finds a knife and cuts a small disc out of her abdomen. The beating light in the disc dies, and Chiana cries out in anguish. Next thing, Chiana has stolen Aaron's prowler and gone to the nearest planet. A royal cemetery planet where she meets a group of mud-colored, mushroom-munching punks. And I have just one question.
Is everyone here very stoned?
Rigel, John, and Aaron come after her, though Rigel takes one look at the royal burial ground and his only thought is to snatch as much treasure as possible.
I don't snatch, I procure.
Leaving Aaron and John to deal with Chiana. They find her upside down and screaming, but it's not what you think. This is some kind of endurance challenge, and the punks have gathered to cheer her on. She says she's having fun. She likes the planet of the punks, and she wants to stay. Besides, now she doesn't have time for John. Realizing he hurt her, John asks Aaron to talk to her. Be sensitive, he says. Be nice.
Just don't shoot her.
Aaron asks Chiana about the disc she removed. It's a life disc, she says. It connected her to her brother Neri. If it stopped working, that means he's dead. But she doesn't want to talk about him. She wants to party. Come on, Aaron, join the party. These people are fun, and they're going to have a clan gathering. At the gathering, they find a whole gaggle of punks, a veritable Woodstock of sweaty, muddy stoners, all around 20. They all think Aaron and John are just ancient. And they're all gathered around a cliff face to listen to their leader, Malnon. On a signal from Malnon, a bunch of the boys start jumping off the cliff, yelling all the way down. Miraculously, they are caught by some invisible force. Aaron recognizes it's a sonic net, a peacekeeper force field activated by voices. Just then another boy who has been standing by a pregnant girl steps up to take his turn. But he doesn't yell, and so there is no net. The clan is unfazed by his death. Nor is Chiana, who is enthralled by the jump and wants to take her turn. Crichton is appalled, and he thinks he can yell her out of jumping, a plan which goes about as well as you might expect. Meanwhile, he's run into the only adult on planet Woodstock. She's suffering from some kind of radiation sickness. She says they all either jump when they are 22 or succumb to the sickness and hide away to die. So that's why everyone thinks John and Aaron are ancient. John takes a tissue sample and sends it to Zahn for analysis. Armed with this knowledge, John tries to negotiate with Malnon to get him to convince Chiana not to jump. Malnon will only talk if John plays mushroom Russian roulette with him, something which John agrees to do for some reason, and as he descends into a trip, Malnon admits that he's scared and he wants Chiana to take his place in the jump. When John wakes up, Chiana is pleased. He did something stupid and risky, so he must understand. She tells him Malnon told her everything, but guess what?
Oh no, I'm not leaving. I'm jumping.
Well, yelling didn't work, negotiating didn't work, so now John tries knocking her out and dragging her back to the ship. But Aaron stops him. This is something Chiana has to work out for herself. If she wants to jump, she will jump. If she wants to destroy herself, she will find a way. What, now you understand her, he says? No, but I understand loss. They all do. And so John agrees not to force her. As the clans gather, John tells them the results of Zahn's analysis. There is radiation in the tunnels, which the cliffs are amplifying. They can escape the effects and live long lives, but they'll have to give up jumping and move to the surface. Malnon refuses, and John threatens his life to demand a clan vote. But even when the clan votes, they all refuse. They want to jump, even if it means a short, brutal life. The crew are almost done here, but Chiana still wants to jump. And finally, John accepts that he can't stop her. Yelling as she jumps, Chiana is caught by the sonic net and laughs at the thrill. Sometime later, as John and Aaron wait for Chiana on the surface, they are met by Rigel, returning the stolen treasure, which it turned out was haunted. Chiana performs one last task. She buries her brother's life disk and prepares to return to the ship. John acknowledges to Aaron that he realizes he's been acting erratically.
Lately, do I seem a little crazy to you?
So that's our episode. Thoughts?
Well, I'll take the stone, if you don't mind, Jack.
Go for it, brother. Go for it.
I was almost there. Like, I was almost there with the episode, with what I think they were trying to do, what I think they were trying to say. And I was moving past the trippy visuals, which, hearing that this was the same guy who did back and back and back and back and back and back to the future. Okay, cool. He's got a niche. But the final, I guess, message of the episode really soured the entire experience for me. And we'll get there when we talk about Chiana specifically and about the nature of the jump and all that kind of stuff. But I didn't have a great time with this one.
That's interesting because as I was watching it last night and getting ready to record with you guys, I honestly thought that I was going to be in the minority in that it didn't land for me either. We'll get into it as you said Josh, but for me, like, the episode, I can't say that I didn't like it because I didn't dislike it, but it just overall, really, there was lots of really great subtext and they were trying to say something with it, but I feel like the subtext was overshadowed by the confusion of the fiction of the show or the reality of the show. Yeah, it's just an odd mishmash of stuff. I don't know.
So it's better than Jeremiah Crichton.
Oh yeah, yeah.
That's our bar. That's our baseline.
Yeah. No, this episode is a mess. The only thing is, I always remember this as being the weird mess or the trippy mess, but having watched it a couple times now for the discussion, I find that while the 90% of this episode is just an absolute mess, all the John and Aaron and Chiana scenes, I like. Like, I like the sort of sibling relationship that's developing there, and I like the trauma stuff that we're sort of doing. It's just that everything about this planet and these people is a mess. And actually, the director of this episode has gone on record about like considering this a mess, Rowan Woods, and like, because it's one of those messes where it could have been good. There were they were trying to deal with more grown-up themes. You know, they had some leeway from the channel and from the network, and they were wanting to deal with some, more mature ideas and like not do like Beer Bad. But it just kind of doesn't come together. Yeah, and he's like, yeah, part of that was my direction, and there are other things, and this one just didn't. And yeah, I mean, I think one of the things that I would trace it to is I love the sort of made up language that Farscape tends to use. This is too much.
Yeah, I found that too, and you guys know that I've got a bit of an aversion to that anyway throughout the series so far. It just kind of, it makes me cringe a little bit when they use those made up like swear words and stuff. I don't know. You sort of hit the nail on the head there, Sarah. This episode isn't bad as much as it is like disappointing, because it could have been something so poignant and beautiful, and it just because it got so muddled, and because, as I said, the fiction overshadowed the subtext, it just didn't work.
Yeah,
I agree completely that I enjoyed watching the character interplay for sure. And at this point, like, John and Aaron as characters feel like they've just hit we hardly have to say words to each other. We can just like look and glance, and everybody knows and understands what we're talking about, kind of a level. And then this was a much better, to me, like cold opening reason to incite the plot. Then for me, the bottom is Lux and Hyper Rage. This was better than Lux and Hyper Rage to get the plot going, because at this point it was very grounded and realistic in what we know about Chiana's character, that she feels a bond to John, and then John summarily rejecting her, and her not having the greatest impulse control meant that she had to fly off and do her own thing to escape from her feelings.
I could totally understand the sort of wanting to escape from the feelings, especially given that, she's coded as like sort of teens, 20s.
Yeah.
And has obviously lived a hard life and everything. The idea of knowing that someone you love has died and you're nowhere near them, you can't, like, that is a heartbreaking moment. Like, you can feel for her in that moment. And I think one of the highlights of this episode is everything that Gigi actually does with what she's given. Even though what she's given is like this confusing mess. Like, and the fake out that she's going to be attacked in the beginning annoys me.
Yeah. Yeah. It's also, to me, it came across as they were trying to imply a sexual assault too, which just made me feel a little icky. I didn't like that.
Yeah.
I do love the idea of her being so overcome with grief that she cuts the disc out. Like, she can't handle it. Well, that's how I read it. Like, she was it was so consuming that she cut it out of her. It makes me think of Willow in Buffy being so overcome with guilt that she basically tries to kill herself and the rest of the world with it. Or like, in the real world, when people deal with grief by, killing themselves with drugs and alcohol, or even like suicide and stuff. I thought that was a neat idea. A
lot of neat ideas in this episode.
That's the thing, yeah.
But taking the stone is both too literal and too abstract.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know how it manages to be both, but it is.
That's too literal and too abstract. Yeah, like, and it made the abstract nature of everything made it feel tedious to me, and confusing.
Yeah,
like I still don't understand. Was she intending to kill herself, or did she decide not to? Like the cushion, I don't know. Like it.
So we can. I mean, want to start with the big one? Or start with Chiana?
Yeah, let's start with Chiana.
Yeah.
Okay.
Take the floor, Josh.
So that was the only detail that clicked for me that made it kind of okay, I see what they're doing. Was the nature of the sonic net at the bottom of the pit being activated by the sound of the person who's jumping. And so the dude who jumped and died, he didn't make a sound. Even though everybody up top was hooting and hollering, and this is why I think I missed it the first time. Everybody up top was doing their anteater pose or whatever it was, but he just splat, and that was graphic. But he just splat in the bottom there. But Chiana, I think, jumped to live because she was screaming the whole way down, instead of jumping to die by being silent and having surrendered to the fall. But
but there is a big but there.
There's a big ass but. It falls apart. That I guess that clue, and maybe this is part of the directing mess that you alluded to, Sara. Like that clue being so subtle leaves it so ambiguous that I can't tell whether or not Chiana attempted suicide and survived, or jumped off of a thrill ride.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I think what she's doing is like sort of testing herself. It's sort of like, that sort of like jumping and then like seeing if she saves herself or not.
Which is a terrible idea.
Absolutely.
I liken it to sort of jumping out of an airplane with a parachute on, obviously, like doing something risky and crazy, just sort of like testing your mortality a little bit, I don't know, but
the stuff that teenagers do, but
this is, except it would be more like jumping out of an airplane and someone having handed you a bag that could be a parachute and you don't know.
Or handing you two bags, and on the way down you have to decide parachute or backpack, and
exactly.
I don't know. It's I get what they're trying to sort of. It's a mess.
Here's the question for me: what was this episode about? Was it about suicide or was it about drugs?
I think it was about grief.
Grief, yeah.
Okay.
Grief and loss.
And they're trying to talk about like
dealing with grief, I think.
Dealing with grief and like the way you try to escape it with stuff. And like also that when you try to do things to make you feel alive. And it's all just kind of like there are too many things.
I feel like why it is muddled and vague and stuff is because they didn't want to go too dark with it. I think that's the idea I'm getting.
That was one of the most graphic on-screens. Like they didn't even show Black Widow's body. Or
They
showed the impact.
They didn't want to like explicitly say that Chiana was trying to kill herself, so they made this vague like, is she gonna jump and the sonic net and stuff? I don't know. I'm just spitballing here. Like
I'm with you. We're doing a lot of the post-production work here.
Yeah, and I think like the culture there makes no sense whatsoever.
No, it doesn't. Absolutely.
And not in the way that like sometimes people make no sense, but in like, okay, so I get they live to their 22.
Yes.
Right. So they're young and stupid. They clearly have fetal alcohol syndrome. Like there could have been an interesting political allegory or something. Like there's some of the ingredients for that, because we've got like a royal planet and people who live underneath the royal burial planet, and like there could be some comment on like the way that hierarchies and capitalism, and like, you know, if these people are suffering and dying short lives and you know, doing everything to us to, you know, taking chemicals to escape it, because that is a real thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
But and you know, and especially if there was some thing beyond just the stone itself that was making them, you know, that they were choosing, there might be some sense to this, but it just like there's nothing there.
There's nothing.
Yeah.
What are they staying for?
What do they eat?
And
where do they sleep?
And also like they jump, but sometimes they catch themselves in nets, and other times they jump, but sometimes they kill themselves, and other times they don't. And I don't get it. Like what? The interesting thing about the mushrooms, well, really, it's not really an interesting thing because they didn't do anything with it, but there has been a lot of research, particularly in the Netherlands, done surrounding the use of psilocybin mushrooms and helping people deal with trauma. There's even been some research into using psilocybin to help terminally ill patients deal with their impending death. And I get that this was like 20 years ago, so they probably weren't going for something like that. But again, like the mushrooms were there and they didn't really do anything with it. Like,
yeah,
cool, there was mushrooms.
It's just something stupid and risky that, you know, he goes on a trip. And Chiana is too smart to be interested in Molnon. Like he's a nothing burger.
I mean, you could make the argument that she's grieving, so she's a little more susceptible and like kind of like she's acting risky and doing things she wouldn't normally do because of grief. But
I just figured that he was another way for her to escape. But she wasn't really interested in him so much as she was enjoying not having to worry about anything with him.
Yeah, and I think they could have. I think that Gigi Edgley was trying to give that with her performance, but it also just is kind of not really there in the writing.
No. And then, so we get some conflict between John and Aaron. John feels guilty for turning Chiana away when she reached out to him for for some help. And then, so Chiana tells John that she's going to jump, and he freaks out and he's like, no, you can't do that. And he tries to knock her out, and I think he's going to take her back to Moya. I like that scene in the fact that you see him actually tear up, like he's genuinely affected by it. But then we get the conflict between John and Aaron, and John's like, no, we can't let her do this. And Aaron's like, you have to let her make her own choice. And if this is like a suicide allegory, no, you can't let somebody commit suicide. Like, what are you doing, Aaron?
Exactly.
Like,
yes,
I'm completely against, and that's why, like, I feel like I missed something. Like, is there something that I'm missing here? Because, like, why would Aaron essentially be like, okay, yeah, you can jump, you can kill yourself if you want to? Like,
I think from the thing that I would understand from Aaron's perspective, not that I'm co-signing this, is she's thinking like a combat training person, right? They would not taking her along would be taking along someone who has a death wish. You would not, if you were a fighter pilot or something like that, you would not want someone with you who had a death wish, because you can't rely on them. They might put you in danger. And she's right. If Chiana wants to do risky, stupid shit, she's going to do risky, stupid shit. And, I think she's perhaps assessing the situation, and of the risky, stupid shit, this doesn't risk anyone but Chiana.
Yeah.
But if it's actually suicide, like, it's like, I understand that from Erin's perspective, that if she's thinking of the crew as like, we can't have someone part of the crew who is actively, so you have to sort of have her not be actively part of the crew, but that doesn't mean you leave her to actually like.
Oh yeah.
I think that's your interpretation is both valid and also giving a lot more credit to the writing, directing, and quality of Black. I didn't get any of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
B, it seemed to me like the writers were conflating two ideas about mental health. The first of which is, in order for someone to get better in whatever it is, that person has to make that choice for themselves. For someone to want to do something about, their mental health, their depression, their addiction, whatever, they have to be the person to like voluntarily sit down on a couch or in a hospital or something like that. Because if they're resisting, if they're fighting it, whatever, it's not going to take. But that's a long-term perspective on mental health. In a short-term acute moment, if someone is in active danger to themselves, John, I was completely on John's side. John was absolutely right to knock her out and take her back to Moya.
Yeah. Yeah. When somebody is actively in the midst of a mental health crisis, like if we see somebody standing over the railing of a bridge and they're like gonna jump, we don't just go, well, it's their choice if they want to jump. No, sometimes people are actively restrained, forcibly taken to a mental health center to help them get better. You can't. When people are acting crazy and erratic, sometimes it is absolutely necessary to forcibly make them get help. Sorry, I'm struggling with my own words here.
No, at the very least, forcibly get them in a position where they can get help.
Exactly. It is. It's basically you forcibly restrain them or take them somewhere to give them a chance to calm down, and then once they have gotten through that erratic state, then it's up to them to make a choice to get better or whatever,
Because especially, so the other thing that really like broke it apart for me in this episode, and I think you're absolutely right. Sorry, you characterized it so well. It was both too literal and too metaphorical.
Yeah.
Like the thing that absolutely broke it apart for me was that Chiana, for most of this episode, was high as a kite. So there also isn't an opportunity to let someone who is not in their right state of mind, either an altered state or diminished state or whatever, be like, well, it's your choice. You're making an informed decision. No, they're not.
Exactly. Like when someone is erratic and in the midst of a crisis, they cannot think rationally.
Let alone when she's high.
Yeah. I mean, it's so complicated because on the one hand, I understand the sort of like, because I don't like him being so high-handed and taking choices away from her.
Yeah, that bugs me with John in general. Yeah. He does that a lot.
Yeah, and especially when the power dynamics of like the particularly the brotherly power dynamics, the sort of sibling relationship they're developing, and like at the high-handed, you shouldn't take choices away from people unless you absolutely
hurt themselves.
Like, unless you absolutely have to. We haven't established whether or not. Like, we haven't established what properly established what Chiana's mental state is. Is she stupid risk taking?
We don't know what her motivation was.
Because stupid risk taking, sometimes you have to work out. Sometimes you have to work through. Yeah. Or is she high as a kite and wanting to die?
Yeah.
And it's like, what scenario are we dealing with? Because in the she has to do some stupid risk taking to get over, to deal with her emotional stuff. Then I'm on Erin's side, that's a thing she has to work through. And we don't want her working through it in a situation that would risk anybody else.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
If she's actively out of, incapacitated and trying to actually destroy herself, I'm on John's side. Although yelling someone out of a decision, yelling someone into change.
Oh yeah, no, you can't do that. Like
John has no mental health crisis training. It's like
I said, sometimes you do have to be forcibly removed, taken somewhere to recover. But no, yelling and screaming and like berating and all that stuff, no, that doesn't help in any situation. But yeah, Sara, you're absolutely right. But the problem for me is still I don't know which one. I don't know what Chiana was doing. I still don't know. Yeah. No idea. Yeah.
And I don't know if it's like she's doing stupid risk taking and John thinks she's suicidal. Like then it's like, no, it's like this just is a mess.
And
so like there is this and stupid risk taking. I think about like your earlier example, skydiving, roller coasters, whitewater rapids, base jumping, like whatever, something where the chance of death is heightened, but it isn't a binary outcome. Like in this thing, there's exactly one safety measure in place in jumping off of this stone. And it's a binary outcome. Either you will die or you will not die.
Yeah. Right.
So I find the taking the stone to be an inherently suicidal decision.
Yeah. Yeah. And I do not believe that Erin would say, well, no, if she wants to die, just let her die. Like to me, Erin must have known that Chiana didn't want to die in order for her to be like, oh, well, it's her choice. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't. Guys, I don't know. It's like I say things and then I start second guessing myself and I don't know.
Yeah, no, I mean, yes. I don't know. I've been in the position, this is the thing when you've had friends who are drug addicts or in some way is self-destructive where you have to walk away. There's the whole thing about letting someone hit bottom. And this again is too literal.
Right, a literal bottom,
literal rock bottom, like,
and it's a literal rock bottom. Yes.
Yeah. No. But I don't know. I've been in that situation where you have to walk away.
That's fine.
But it's not this.
I've also been so as part of my job, I work at a university. Part of my job has been previously to be a crisis responder to young college students in acute mental health crises. My role was literally just a gateway to resources. Like I just had to get someone to sit still long enough so that an actual counselor could come in and help them out. But I have talked to people out of killing themselves before. And I have had to engage other resources to help me with that, including the police department here at my university. But most of the time, it's obviously not what John was doing, of like getting in someone's face and berating them. Most of the time, it's getting someone no, not at all. It's getting someone to pause long enough so that they can feel heard, even for just a split second. That's what does it. And then, like it does still have to be their choice of like, I think you need help. I think you deserve help. I am not the one to help you, but I can place you in contact with the person who can. So let's do that. And then what you do after that is up to you.
Yeah.
But this whole thing of John being like, you know what, Erin, I think you're right. I think the only way that Chiana's not going to kill herself is if she decides not to kill herself. Today, right now, after she's been tripping on acid for 4 days.
And she's surrounded by like a suicide cult.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to go watch her jump off this cliff with nobody else was there for that. So again, to me, that says it was off books,
And also, like,
not the ritual.
When she jumps, he sort of like dives as if he's like gonna try and like catch her. So he doesn't have faith in what she is doing at all.
No.
No.
Yeah. Guys, the more we talk about this, the more baffled I am.
it is baffling because this is not how, and I think I do think that the episode that the writing co-signs that this is not how you deal with someone in crisis.
Absolutely, yeah.
I don't. The episode seems to be very on board with this is the right thing to do.
Well, actually,
I mean,
yeah,
Joe,
I don't know.
I don't know. John's yelling and drugging and all that, like that is not the right response. But what is it saying the right response is? Just standing by and letting her do it? Because that's not the right response either.
That's what John does, and that's what the episode shows us. So the episode is.
The music swells.
Yeah, I meant like the yelling at her and all that and like taking her agency away. Like it's not co-signing that. But what is like is it? And he doesn't quite stand there and just let her do it because he does sort of do the jumping forward. But so it's what are you saying, episode? Like, because if it's metaphorically, if someone is doing something stupid that is like if someone is doing drugs or if someone's an alcoholic and you have tried everything possible, there is a point at which you walk away because you're not going to be able to stop them. They're only going to be able to stop themselves. Yes. But that's not actually doing them a favor. That's protecting yourself.
Which is valid and necessary in several instances.
Yes.
But absolutely. And I've had to do that too at various points in my life. But also like the escalated, like whether or not someone is going to fall off the wagon tonight and have a drink versus whether or not someone is going to drive their car off the road are two very different, I can't be there to save you kinds of like.
Yeah.
Self-destructive and suicidal are not the same thing.
Not at all. They're not at all the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide attempts and suicidal ideation are acute crises.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You can get someone through the night by just getting them to think how nice breakfast will be tomorrow. Mm-hmm. That'll only get them through the night, and then you have to the stupidest reason possible.
That's all we need.
You just need something. But that's something that's completely different than getting someone to change self-destructive behavior.
Exactly.
Hold on for another day.
It is so funny to me that we are having a discussion where we are almost trying to find what the episode was trying to like tell us, but didn't quite do it. Like we're actually coming up with it on our own, and that's freaking
because this episode is not like, it's not that they didn't try. It's that they tried too hard.
Absolutely.
They put too many things in, and now we're like, what is this goulash of stuff you dropped on my doorstep?
And that's why I can't say that I dislike the episode, because I know exactly what they were trying to say, and I wish I had the experience that they wanted us to have. I really wish it was there, but it just gets too, like I've been saying, I keep saying it, but the fiction of the show overshadowed the subtext of what they were trying to say. And I do genuinely think that in an attempt to not go too dark with it, like explicitly say that Chiana was suicidal, they came up with this hodgepodge of crap that just muddies it. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm confused still.
It makes me think if there's an episode of Quantum Leap where he leaps into the body of an army of a Vietnam vet in a hospital, and he's trying to save his roommate who is suicidal, paraplegic and suicidal, and in the end he lets him jump in the pool because he's paraplegic. He jumps in the pool, and in the end, Sam lets him do it. And then when he's fighting when he does actually in some way fight for his life, he rescues him to make him like recognize that he does actually want to live.
Right.
That is an episode from the 90s. That is not how you deal with someone who's suicidal.
No.
We that is such old bad advice.
Yeah.
Like, yes, finding the will to live is incredibly powerful. And sometimes a person has to find it for themselves. But you can't just be like, yeah, go ahead and try and kill yourself to see if you find the will to live.
Exactly.
Because here's the other side of it is, and I'm, knowing you and your editing, I'm sure there's going to be a trigger warning at the top of this video. But like,
yes,
we're if for anybody who's watching and who's ever had this experience as well, we'd love to hear your thoughts as you choose to share them. But from the other side, from someone who is feeling suicidal, if they're feeling that they're completely backed into a corner, there's no point in trying because no one's going to care anyway. There's no point in talking because no one's going to listen anyway. Like any number of like, self-fulfilling negative prophecies that are going through their heads. And if someone came along and was like, well, you might as well give it a go, that would validate their inner monologue. But
absolutely, yeah.
When someone is at that crisis point, when someone is considering or planning or intending to end their life, that is one of the most valid times when help is necessary and appreciated. Like it, none of us are supposed to do this alone in the first place. None of us are supposed to do life alone in the first place. But in the second place, the kindness of friends, family, strangers, whatever, is perfectly acceptable in that low moment. And like people are worth help even when they're at their worst,
Yeah.
And sometimes, like you said, Sara, sometimes it ain't me to give that help. But at the very least, I can open a door for him.
One time in like, who knows how many times, you might have someone who goes, well, fuck you then, and I'm going to live out of spite. But
that's the exception.
It's those times are vanishingly rare, and you don't know that you're going to that it's going to be that in the moment.
Because here's the other thing, and this is part of I remember this from one of the trainings that I was in about mental health crises, that the people that die by suicide and no one sees it coming and there's no cry for help or nothing like that are different than the people who express a suicidal ideation and leave signs, breadcrumbs, trails to follow. Like Chiana stole a prowler and flew down to the nearest planet. She could have just walked out an airlock.
She could have taken a transport. She took Aaron's prowler.
She wanted help.
Yeah. Oh, I like
she wanted
that.
She wanted attention, and it's okay to want attention.
Yes, it is.
Oh, absolutely. And sometimes that's what we're missing. We want someone to care, and that's okay. Like we're human beings.
Yeah, I remember when
people roll their eyes.
Yeah. I think people are better about this now, but I remember when I was a teenager, the narrative around suicide was that people do it for attention.
Yeah, and
attempt it for attention.
That's still something that gets thrown around.
It is.
Okay, you have my attention.
Right.
Okay, when I was a teenager, when I attempted, I I was not seeking attention because I didn't tell almost anybody about it for 3 days. But I was very, very sick because I tried to take stuff and and then when I told people I got loads of attention, but that wasn't what it was about.
I'll tell you what, even if that was what it was about, if someone is just, attempting suicide for attention, I'll give them some fucking attention.
Well, yeah. And that's
I'd much rather have somebody alive. I don't feel like I'm in a position to write off somebody's life based on their motives.
And the other harmful idea is that those who say they are going to do it won't actually do it. That is another harmful idea, because that's not true. There isn't even a crumb of truth in that. Well,
the crumb of truth in that is if someone is talking about their desire to do it, then I've had conversations with people online and stuff who were in that crisis place and actually talked about it. And the fact that they actually talked about it was the start of a journey to healing. And it would be part of those part of group discussions, and people were getting them help. And some of us were just like, okay, what do you look forward to tomorrow? While someone else finds you the suicide helpline for York, that to just kind of keep and in that and telling them, hey, you told a bunch of strangers that you were having these feelings. So at least the fact that you vocalize them means that you are in some way you're starting to reach for help, as opposed to people who don't vocalize and you never hear from them. But that's not the same as saying someone who says it isn't going to do it. It's by saying it, that can be the beginning of a journey.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
But
sometimes, and as we've said, sometimes saying it, that is the cry for our help. That is the attempt to reach out for our help, because they don't know how to actually ask for help directly.
Especially when people are young.
Everything's so much worse.
So much worse when you're young and you don't have experience. At least
the teenage years, everything's a 10 out of 10. Everything.
Yeah.
So I think that Chiana stealing the Prowler was a cry for help. I think that the character was self-destructive and suicidal, and I think that the writing mucked it up at the ending there.
The
metaphor, I think the planet people, the punks, are supposed to inform us they're supposed to be a reflection of what's going on inside of her, but they make no sense.
Exactly. I still don't get it, and I don't think I'm ever going to get it.
and I don't know. Some of this is just wow, John and Aaron, why are you trying to talk to someone in the middle of labor? She's someone who's actively crowning is not in the position to be you know what? I am going to change the entire makeup of my society. Just... And on in terms of the Muppet thing, the effect was cool of the see-through baby.
I loved that. One positive thing I do want to say is that I loved a lot of the aesthetics about this episode. I loved the set design on the planet. I thought it was freaking cool being able to see through her stomach, seeing the baby. I love the sound design, and this was directed by the same person who did Back and Back and Back to the Future, right? Is that what you
Rowan
said?
Woods.
Yeah. That is so obvious to me now, because it's got that same sort of experimental, trippy vibe, and I really enjoy that. Like some really interesting camera angles. The sound design was great. The sets were amazing. It's such a shame that the writing wasn't there to elevate it. Yeah. It's such a shame. This feels like such a missed opportunity, because we've been talking about it for the last hour. There was so many great ideas there that just didn't, the seeds didn't germinate well or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's good ideas in the writing of this. It's
So
the
many good
execution
ideas.
went.
I wanted to feel all the things the writing wanted me to feel, but I just couldn't. Like, so disappointing.
Scene to scene, the scenes with Aaron and John, I felt real things. Those were
those were good.
Yeah.
Should we talk about John's? We we're sort of breaking our formula here, but we're talking about character development. Let's talk about John. Do you have thoughts on John in this episode?
So I can't remember if you mentioned it in a review we were doing or when we were just hanging out at one point, Sara, but you've already drawn attention to John's behavior so far this season.
Yes, I did.
And so him having, like, I guess, a moment of self-reflection or calling himself out was interesting. Like, it immediately piqued my interest because and so I'm kind of curious what's going on there and what they're doing with that. Of course, it did its job. It tantalized me. But it definitely seems like, him being all like rough and grumpy at the beginning while he was working on whatever he was working on. I don't remember what it was. And then towards the end there, taking a Russian roulette mushroom. And then at the very end being like, I haven't been myself lately. It all tracked and it all went well. It just didn't really do much arc wise for his character in this episode. I also understand that a lot of his, let me just, and then take it back up to the ship, was largely motivated by his own guilt and how he treated it at the beginning of the episode, which also, is not necessarily the best platform to try to help somebody else on. Mm-hmm. I'm a little more forgiving, and I might not have drugged somebody, but I definitely would have been in favor of like, no, come here, we're leaving. In kind of the philosophy of I would much rather have somebody pissed off at me the next day, but alive.
Yeah.
Rather than any other way. So I don't know, not a whole lot of meat with John this episode. He and Aaron kind of worked off of each other very well.
Yeah, I found myself, as I said earlier, I found myself agreeing with John, but still sort of miffed by his sort of bravado. No, I'm going to be the hero here. Like, dude, chill out. Like, I don't know.
I think if we look at the last 3 episodes, there's a different John than, actually episodes since A Hidden Memory. I think we've seen a different John than we saw in most of the first season. There's some character stuff.
Okay. Are you alluding to something?
I mean, it's in our name, Muppet Sex and Trauma. Like the whole thing with Farscape is that things have effects, and we are seeing that John's trauma has not been erased. I think this is what's informing him being he's a materially different person than he was before all that shit happened to him.
I do get the feeling that maybe we might be reaching sort of a boiling point with him. Because I guess he seems to be becoming more and more just like dialed up, I guess. So maybe we're heading towards something. I don't know. But I said that about Zahn, so I don't freaking know. Let's talk about the Rigel, the tiny little Rigel. What the? I'm sorry. I'm gonna say it. What the fuck?
What the fuck?
Literally,
I'll say it with you, buddy.
This just felt like the writers going, oh shit, we have to figure out something else that can happen on the side, and they're like, well, how about Rigel steals some shit and then it starts moving around? Like, what?
And then it's fucking haunted?
Yeah, like it's so divorced from the rest of the episode, and it really did feel like it was shoehorned in because they needed something else. I don't know. It was weird.
Yeah, it is a bit of a plug and play B plot.
Yeah.
Farscape has flirted with sci-fi fantasy, like the line between those two so far. There's Zahn's nature is more often than not portrayed as something like she's tapping into like mystical abilities and all this kind of stuff, as opposed to like,
and all that stuff.
Yeah, as opposed to anything that might be grounded in like my species can do this kind of stuff. And so it's not, for me, the supernatural, maybe this mask is haunted, wasn't totally out of left field, but that it didn't go anywhere, affect anything, or seem to have a point, made it really like, why?
And it would have been better, I think, if it was ambiguous as to whether it was in his head or not. If maybe like him like eating the worm.
It felt like,
which the fuck was that?
Remember back in the day, like Pixar films used to have like a 5-minute short film at the beginning that had nothing to do with the movie. It was just a tiny little short film. It felt like that. It felt like a tiny.
Rigel is like the guy with the acorn in Ice Age.
Yes, that's exactly what it felt like to me. Like, and I was just like, why? Like, it really is. It's like they wrote the episode and they were like, oh fuck, Rigel, Zahn, and Dargo are just standing around on Moya doing nothing. Oh shit, we have to figure something out. Like, what?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like, we can't have them doing laundry for the second episode in a row.
Yeah, I don't know. This episode, man, I wanted to feel something. Like, here's the thing though too. I really admire the attempt, because at this point, like, we've seen all the other characters deal with loss in some way, like John being like stranded, and then there's stuff with his father, Erin being excommunicated from the peacekeepers and losing her identity, Dargo with his family and his son and all that stuff. We haven't really seen that from Chiana. She's always had this, like, we know she's seen some shit and she's been through some stuff, but she's always had this like tough exterior, this like happy go lucky tough girl thing, which is great. But it was really good to see some vulnerability from her, and to see her like grapple with loss and grief. But they just came out like a wet fart. Like, I'm so
if instead of jumping, she stood there on the edge and talked about Neri and cried.
Yeah.
And then like stepped back, from the edge, my friend. But and I guess that's one last bone to pick for this drum that I'm beating with a dead horse, is the way that it resolved her grief was, I don't know, kind of extremely unsatisfying. Like, she didn't die, so great. And then like stands up and John is up there hooting and hollering, and then they bury the disc. And that was it. And it was just, after all the buildup, and especially when couched in the metaphor of suicide, like, that was just so bland.
And especially when we have the scene where she's sort of refusing to really talk with Erin. It's like, no, what we needed was a scene for her to talk.
Yes.
Yeah. And
with
I
Erin,
also thought
great, like to mirror that.
Absolutely. And I also thought, like, towards the beginning of the episode, as things were unraveling, I thought they were going to explore the bond with her brother, because being intrinsically linked to someone through whatever means, like their disc, whatever, but having that strong bond, it's like, I thought they were going to explore the idea of she hasn't just lost her brother, she's almost like lost a piece of herself, like a soulmate or something, because they were intrinsically linked, but it just didn't. I don't know.
Hopefully they do later.
Yeah.
But they didn't this time.
But I did, like, I'm sort of like retconning or headcanoning it myself just to make it better, because I'm thinking, hey, that probably was what it was like for her. That's why she felt the need to like cut it out, because the grief was so overwhelming. But they just...
I think we get that in Gigi's performance.
Yes.
Everybody did great. Everybody did great this episode.
Yeah.
You guys did great. All of y'all did great.
And it wasn't Jeremiah Crichton.
Yeah.
So we'll take it.
Also, like, I just also want to make it very clear, and I think I can speak for the three of us when I say that I didn't hate it. It's not necessarily a bad episode.
Yeah.
It's just it was underbaked and there was too much going on. And it's just it
was a cookie dough episode.
Yeah, and I genuinely think part of the issue was they were scared to go too dark with it, so they watered it down. But they, instead of watering it down, they mixed it with, like, I don't know, like herbal tea, and then put like a splash of vinegar in, and just like all this crap that just made a weird, sticky, smelly sour tea. I don't know.
They were experimenting with darker, more serious topics, and that's good.
Mm-hmm.
But when you're talking when you're talking about something like loss and trauma and self-destructiveness, you have to actually be very clear what you're saying.
And you need to be deliberate. You
don't necessarily have to explicitly, tell us every detail, but you need to know where it's going. It's like season 6 and the Dark Willow and magic stuff. It's like there's so much that's really good there, and I love that. But there's always this kernel of, but they never quite worked out what they were saying exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah,
obviously I can't prove this, but I just had the thought now that I'm pretty sure. Well, I feel as though there was probably several versions of this script written, and then in the end they went for a hodgepodge of multiple scripts and just shoved them together. I don't know, but I can't prove that.
Quite possibly. And also, like, we should say that, like, this is laying down track as the train is running. This is the business of TV, is you don't always have time to make a script work. And
everybody's going to have an off game.
Yeah. And making something in the world is a lot harder and a lot more important than criticizing something in the world. So
absolutely.
We are criticizing it because it's interesting and because it's instructive and because I think this was instructive to better episodes down the line. That you will see better episodes become to them. But yeah.
And we've already seen better episodes too. And so, like, having come off of episodes of Farscape, just absolutely a puddle on the floor is where what I enjoy about the show and where I know the show can be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So in all of that, tell me, what was your favorite part? Find something in the goulash.
My favorite part, the scene where Chiana jumps, even though I have a lot of issues with it. I specifically love the part where John says, "You've shown me courage plenty of times." I was like, "Oh, that was nice." That's my favorite part.
Yeah, we did get a little of her talking.
Josh, what about you, sir? Yeah,
I enjoyed the kind of Scooby-Doo scene where Rigel goes into the rest of the crew and he's like, "I know what you're doing. You're all trying to mess with me." And they're all like, "What are you talking about?" Like, that was entertaining. That was a good snack in the middle of the goulash.
For me, I think it's the moment with Aaron and John, where where she says, "I understand loss." Okay, so the next episode. Ladies, gentlemen, and NB folks, the following episode is Crackers Don't Matter.
Sorry. I knew it was coming too, and I'm still laughing.
Just to note that the next episode, Crackers Don't Matter, does contain some scenes that might be sensitive around issues of sexual assault. Although actual next episode, or perhaps we'll see where it lands, we're going to record a Q&A just because we need a bit of a buffer.
Mm-hmm.
And the following episode after Crackers Don't Matter is The Way We Weren't. So those are our upcoming episodes. Gentlemen, would you like to tell the folks where they can find you?
You can find yours truly on Twitter at lackofsurprise1. That's all one word with the number 1 at the end. You can find me over on our Discord server. I always forget what it's called. Howdy Poppets. Howdy Poppets. I did it. You can find me over on Instagram at Jack Kramme, all lowercase, one word. Josh, what about you, sir?
I also hang out over on Instagram. I just talk about food and self-care mostly because those are two of my favorite things.
Good stuff.
Oh, at Josh Gosdin.
And I am Sara Ezzat. You can find me at the Costume Codex on YouTube. And also spouting stuff on Twitter at Blue Stocking Sara. You can also listen to my other podcast, Real Fat People, where Ren the Barbarian and I discuss film representation of fat characters, how we as fat people see those characters. There's 3 episodes up now, and the intro and the final episode of the first season will be out. The final episode, all 5 episodes of the season will be out by the time this recording comes out. All of the episodes will have been up, but and we'll hope to have another season of that at some point.
Yes.
Cool. Just a bit of an interesting thing. There is another Farscape podcast out there called Farscape. By a couple of guys in Europe called Khaki and K.
Okay. Hi.
Hey, friends.
And I've listened to their podcast, and I wrote in from us to their mailbag episode, which you guys can't listen to because they just finished the 3rd season, so it would be spoilers for you. But we got a lovely shout out from Khaki and K. So I want to take a moment to shout out Khaki and K. They're the PG version because they censor themselves and stuff. They're 2 very sweet gay boys. In one I think is in the UK and one is in Holland. And
nice.
Yeah. So I highly recommend checking that out.
Thanks for the shout out, friends. I love that good shit. We don't censor ourselves around here.
We do not censor.
No. As I say, we're a slightly different Farscape in that we're a little more
a little more about the sex and the trauma.
Yeah.
than just the Muppets.
Yeah. So so that is us for this week. Join us for in the future for Crackers Don't Matter.
Awesome. Thanks, friends.
Thank you. Still get deeply frustrated by the whole Willow and magic drugs metaphor.
Yeah.
There's a lot that's really good in that, but again, and I've got this. There's a stupid fruit fly that is just.
I was wondering what that was.
Stupid. It's that time of year, and the beat is so do I, and that moment there, I think, is between them is just something stupid goddamn fucking thing.
My favorite part of this recording is the fly.
Yeah, that's just then that was my favorite part also.
Yes.
You were so emotional and you were so poignant, and then you worked.
Yes. I really felt that, Sarah. I felt that in my soul.
Same.
It keeps going for the webcam. It's like yeah. Anyway.
It wants to be a star.